Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into something truly transformative, a really significant reshaping of global student migration. For decades, the path for ambitious students often led, well, overwhelmingly, to just a few countries. But now that whole landscape is shifting dramatically, almost right before our eyes. Our mission today is to unpack the crucial insights, the key data points that explain why the United States is seeing, frankly, a worrying decline in international student applications. And at the same time, why other regions are seeing this incredible surge. And maybe most importantly, what these seismic shifts mean for you, for global talent, and for the future of innovation. Okay, let's unpack this.
It really is more than just a shift, isn't it? It feels like a profound realignment. What we've been observing is this rapid pivot in where students are choosing to go for higher education. And it's fundamentally altering that flow of, intellectual capital around the world.
Absolutely. Let's start with maybe the most striking development, this notable decline in students applying to the U.S. Historically, the U.S. has been, an undisputed magnet for global talent, consistently drawing in millions. So what's really behind this sudden, pretty steep drop?
Well, it's become quite clear this isn't just, students changing their minds or some natural market thing.
Correct.
What we've really come to understand is that this decline, it seems to be a direct consequence of those more stringent immigration and academic policies. The ones that really took root during the previous administration, specifically under President Trump. These policies created some significant, often quite unforeseen hurdles for international students who had their hearts set on studying in the U.S.
Yeah, and when we talk about stringent policies, it's easy maybe to think of them as just, extra paperwork. But these weren't just minor inconveniences, were they? We've seen countless reports, heard directly from students, about the very real human and practical challenges they ran into.
Precisely. We're talking about really extensive visa delays, the kind that could push back an entire academic year, or worse, jeopardize enrollment altogether. Imagine getting into your dream program only to wait months, sometimes well over a year for that visa decision. It's incredibly stressful. Then there was the heightened scrutiny, which, expanded to include things like social media screenings. That made the whole application process feel incredibly invasive for many, and certainly uncertain. It wasn't just about what was on paper anymore. It was about this broader sense of maybe being under surveillance. And in some really quite heartbreaking cases, we saw outright revocations of student statuses, leaving people who were already studying in the U.S. suddenly without a clear path forward, even facing deportation. It just created this environment of pervasive unpredictability and, frankly, genuine fear. What's fascinating here is how quickly that perception spread globally.
That sounds incredibly disruptive, not just for the students, obviously, but also for the universities that really rely on these students, right? Mm-hmm. What were the immediate consequences, and what are the projected ones for the U.S. stemming from this kind of policy environment? We're not just talking reputation here, are we? There are real numbers involved.
Oh, the numbers are indeed sobering. What we're projecting is potentially a significant 30 to 40% drop in new international enrollments this fall. And that's not just a statistic on a page. It represents tens of thousands of future engineers, scientists, entrepreneurs, artists.
Right.
People who simply won't be bringing their talents here.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just the loss of future innovators. It translates directly into a pretty substantial economic hit, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. This projected drop could potentially cost the U.S. economy somewhere around $7 billion. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's not just a macroeconomic figure floating out there. It places immense strain on college budgets. Many universities, especially public institutions already facing state funding cuts, they've come to depend quite heavily on full-fee-paying international students. These students typically pay the higher unsubsidized tuition rates, unlike many domestic students who get state subsidies or in-state tuition. That revenue often helps subsidize research programs, maintain facilities, support faculty salaries. So a sharp decline like this can lead to pretty significant financial deficits. We could see program cuts, impacts on faculty hiring, maybe even higher tuition for domestic students down the line.
Wow, so it's a real ripple effect through the whole academic ecosystem. And this doesn't sound like just a short-term blip, does it?
Yeah.
What are the longer-term implications for the U.S.? We've heard people talk about a brain drain, a loss of soft power. Mm-hmm. Is that realistic?
Indeed. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the implications really do extend far beyond those immediate financial losses. For decades, American universities have been seen globally as, the gold standard, a beacon of academic excellence, intellectual freedom. If they start being perceived as unwelcoming or just overly difficult to get into, that perception can shift surprisingly quickly. And that could cause long-term damage to their global reputation. This decline also definitely exacerbates the risk of a brain drain. Top global talent, people who might otherwise have picked the U.S. for its cutting-edge research, its innovation opportunities, they're increasingly looking elsewhere. We're talking about future leaders in AI, biotech, quantum computing fields where global leadership is, let's face it, fiercely contested. This outflow of talent affects not just our scientific output, but potentially our diplomatic ties, too. Alumni of U.S. institutions often become influential leaders back home, fostering strong international relationships. That's a less tangible, but very real impact.
That's a truly concerning prospect, especially for a nation that prides itself on innovation and attracting the best minds. Okay, so if the U.S. is facing this decline, where are these students turning their attention? Where are they finding new opportunities, and what's making those destinations so appealing right now?
Right, that's the other really crucial side of this story, and it's where we see other nations becoming, well, key beneficiaries of this whole shift. The United Kingdom, for instance, has rapidly emerged as a major alternative. They seem to be actively positioning themselves to attract international students, perhaps more so than before.
They've certainly made efforts, haven't they? Especially thinking about post-Brexit strategies. What do the numbers tell us? Is the UK succeeding?
Well, what we've observed in the UK's admissions landscape, it reveals a pretty remarkable surge, actually. Looking at the data from UCAS, that's the UK's University Application Service, nearly 7,930 American students applied to UK undergraduate programs for this upcoming fall 2025. Now, that's a striking 13.9% increase just from the previous year, and it marks a 20-year high for US applicants to the UK.
Wow, a 20-year high.
Exactly. And it's not just about American students either. The UK has seen a 2.2% growth in international applications overall, with a particularly notable 10% jump specifically from China, a market where, the US has traditionally been very dominant. We're also seeing an estimated 10% increase in graduate admissions there, particularly in popular fields like business, management, and certain STEM areas. A lot of this momentum probably ties into things like the UK's graduate route visa.
Ah, yes, the post-study work visa.
Precisely. It lets international students stay and work for 2, sometimes 3 years after graduation. That offers a much clearer path to post-study employment than the US system often provides, and that's a huge draw for many students.
That's a significant bounce for the UK then. It really highlights how quickly these global flows can adapt when policy environments change. But beyond traditional Western destinations like the UK, are we seeing other regions stepping up, becoming attractive alternatives in this evolving landscape?
Absolutely. This shift has really shown a spotlight on the rise of Asian universities and also, interestingly, offshore campuses of Western institutions that are located in Asia. Plus, countries in the Middle East, too, are increasingly becoming very attractive options.
What's driving that appeal? Is it just convenience, or is there something more strategic going on?
It seems to be a strategic combination of factors, really. Two big drivers are often considerably lower costs compared to the U.S., even for top-tier education sometimes, and notably fewer administrative obstacles, smoother application processes, easier visa situations. We're seeing some really proactive measures being taken, almost like rolling out the red carpet. For example, the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, HKUST, they've been particularly, let's say, aggressive in their outreach. They're specifically offering things like expedited admissions, credit transfers for students maybe displaced from U.S. institutions. They'll talk comprehensive visa assistance, housing support, even expedited offers. They're essentially saying, look, come here, we'll make it easy for you.
So they're not just passively waiting for students, they're actively competing. Are there other places in Asia also gaining traction with these kinds of proactive approaches?
Yes, certainly. Cities like Singapore and also Malaysia are increasingly appealing for similar reasons. You've got competitive costs, high standards of living, and often a more streamlined pathway to study, frequently with strong links to local industries. Singapore, for example, is investing heavily in R&D, which creates a real pull for students interested in innovation and technology fields. And it's not just Asia. As I mentioned, countries in the Middle East, particularly the United Arab Emirates, are rapidly emerging as significant education hubs. Dubai, for instance, has really transformed itself. It now hosts numerous international branch campuses of well-known universities from the US, the UK, Australia. They've created these special education-free zones, like Dubai International Academic City, offering a very supportive environment for both institutions and students. And the results are quite striking. We've seen their international student numbers jump by roughly 1/3 in just the 2024-2025 academic year alone.
That's huge.
It is, and it's fueled by strategic government investment. That tax-free environment helps, and a rapidly diversifying economy that can offer post-graduation opportunities.
That's an incredible surge in a relatively short time, clearly driven by some very intentional strategies.
Yeah.
So bringing this all together, what does this all mean for you? Whether you're a student maybe considering your options right now, or a parent navigating choices for your kids, or even just someone watching these global trends and talent flow.
Well, to kind of synthesize the overall picture, what we're really witnessing is a dramatic reshaping of global student mobility, largely, as we've discussed, driven by policy shifts that made the U.S. a less attractive, or at least perceived as less attractive, destination. So while the U.S. faces, declining credibility in some quarters and significant revenue loss in the international education market, institutions in the UK, Asia, and the Middle East are rapidly rising to offer students viable and often incredibly attractive alternatives. This raises an important question, I think. What are the long-term ramifications of this profound shift? Ramifications for global talent distribution, for where innovation happens worldwide, and maybe even for international relations in general. It's not just about where students physically study. It's about where future leaders, scientists, entrepreneurs are getting their education, where they're forming their global networks, and ultimately where innovation is likely to flourish in the coming decades. This could genuinely lead to a more decentralized global innovation landscape, couldn't it? With new hubs emerging and challenging those traditional centers of excellence.
That's a really powerful thought to consider. Okay, so today, we've explored how the whole landscape of global student migration is rapidly changing. We saw a significant downturn in the U.S., largely tied to policy shifts, creating challenges for students, but also for the U.S. economy and its universities. Meanwhile, places like the UK and increasingly hubs in Asia and the Middle East are emerging as new, very attractive destinations. They're drawing in students often with fewer obstacles, sometimes lower costs. And this shift carries major implications, not just for education, but for economies, for innovation, for talent flows worldwide. It really underscores how interconnected policy, education, and global talent truly are. It's incredibly valuable, I think, to understand these global shifts as they impact so many facets of our world and are really redefining where the brightest minds are choosing to build their futures.
Indeed. And perhaps the final thought is for nations themselves. They'll need to seriously consider how they adapt their policies, their educational offerings, their whole approach, really, to maintain or attract global talent in this rapidly evolving and clearly much more competitive environment. The competition for bright minds is clearly intensifying, and it seems only those nations and institutions that are proactive, flexible, and genuinely welcoming will likely thrive in this new landscape.
A vital point and a fascinating challenge for nations right across the globe. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into such an important global matter. All the best, and we will meet again with another important matter again.